Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Spartan Shadows podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris, and I'm joined by my co hosts, Zack and Emmett. We're here to break down a little bit of what happened against Illinois for MSU football last week, and then we'll get you geared up for Purdue coming into Spartan Stadium tomorrow night to play our last night game of the year. And then we'll do a couple of other things to wrap up for this episode. Basketball is getting ready to fly out to Maui. We'll do a separate thing on that later on. But yeah, that's just kind of the tentative plan tonight. Zack, Emmett, how you guys doing?
Doing good, especially after the football team released the uniforms last night. Having a new uniform combination with black helmet, green jersey, and black pants. Honestly, you know what they say, if you look good, you feel good. And hopefully that's how they play on Friday. But need that kind of game from them because it's been a little while. So, and we'll talk obviously about Illinois, how Illinois didn't end up Michigan State's way, but has a really good chance this weekend, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. That uniform combination, hopefully it sparks some life. Oh, excuse my cat, he's being a little social, but yeah, I'm hoping that hopefully the team looks as good as the uniform combination looks today, looks from the reveal yesterday, so I'm excited for a game against Purdue. Purdue obviously coming in, not that great, so this should be a very winnable and very, very winnable game for the Spartans.
Not
Yeah,
great is an understatement, by the way.
yes,
Their one
absolutely.
win is FCS Indiana State,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, some trouble over in the West Lafayette Paradise if you're a Purdue fan. But we'll get into that. We'll jump into Illinois real quick first and a recap. The Spartans went to Champaign last weekend. Emmett was there in person and was treated to not the best overall result. Illinois ended up winning by a final score of 38-16. Aiden Childs did have a pretty good game. His first game without turnovers since, I believe, Prairie View. He ended up throwing for 256 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran for another 40. But Illinois' offense just too much. Luke Altmaier had a pretty good game at quarterback, and then Pat Bryant, went off for 135 receiving yards and a touchdown. So tough to see. It was a little bit closer through the middle half, and Illinois pulled away late with 2 unanswered fourth quarter touchdowns. Just, I don't know. It felt like one of those games that happened all year so far. You start off okay and are hanging in and making some plays, and then as the game slowly gets on, you feel it just creeping away from the Spartans. So, Zack, what were any takeaways you got while we hit Illinois real quick before we get on to Purdue?
Well, this game to me is kind of the story of Michigan State football this year for a lot of the teams that they've played that are good opponents. And this is no shot at like FAU. This is no shot at like Iowa. I think Iowa's actually pretty decent. I don't think they're anything spectacular. They haven't really ever been spectacular on offense under their head coach the last 20 years, but that's Iowa for you. That's why they're Iowa. They're really great defensively, but just kind of really the story of the season. Really start out well in the first half for the most part, outside of past games like Oregon, Ohio State, stuff like that, which I think we all talked about going into that game. We had no chance winning that game. In this, I felt like it was a little bit more likely that they could stay competitive. That second half just wasn't competitive, and that's one thing that Michigan State has continued to struggle with first half compared to second half is putting up points. Michigan State just, while they might be kind of close at halftime, they just don't put up points in the second half, and it's probably some combination of adjustments being made. I would say that's probably a lot of it, and then just maybe kind of they don't really have the depth this year. And I think that's one thing that we talked about earlier in the season. Depth in the secondary has been not great, especially with having kind of third string guys playing at some points. Not everyone, not every position, but it was just too much of Illinois. But I do want to give credit to Aiden Childs. He played pretty well in my opinion. He did a good job of protecting the ball. One thing that I would say is for a lot of times it's probably never a good thing when your starting quarterback is your leading rusher of the team. That just means that one or two things are happening. Either he is really good using his legs, or two is he's running for his life. And I kind of felt like he was and has been running for his life for the past couple of weeks, and that's just because this offensive line just continues to not be great. They continue to not get push, and that's just where Michigan State is at, is that they don't get push, and then on the defensive line, they haven't gotten a sack in 6 games. So where is Michigan State not doing well? Guess what? It's the line of scrimmage. And where do you win college football games? Guess what? The line of scrimmage. And it turns out Michigan State hasn't been able to do well there. They haven't won games recently, and the one game that they did really well at the line of scrimmage, it was against Iowa, and they beat Iowa pretty convincingly at home. So I think that was my biggest takeaway, is this front seven and the offensive line for Michigan State just wasn't great at all.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what Zack said. It was a game where the offensive line got bullied. The defensive line, they did have their highest total of quarterback hits in Big Ten play with 5. That said, quarterback hits don't do much for morale when you are over 375 minutes of game time removed from your last sack. The statistic is officially, I believe, 377 minutes and 39 seconds, dating back to the third quarter against Boston College in September. And even the times that Michigan State would send pressure, and has sent pressure the last 6 games, it's not gotten home. Additionally, with the defensive backfield missing Malik Spencer and Charles Brantley, and by the way, both are likely to be out for the entire remainder of the regular season, according to Jonathan Smith. That was announced in the post-game press conference. With that going on, the defensive backs were not able to get as much were not able to generate as much close coverage, and as a result, the first touchdown of the game was, I believe, 57 yards to Bryant, and it resulted in, I believe that was on Angelo Gross, and it gave the Spartans an early deficit, one that they never really recovered from. There were failures on all sides, which is to be expected with a team with so little depth at this point. You saw the offensive line allowed 5 sacks. Ashton Lepo at one point was replaced by true freshman Rakeem Johnson. Neither performed great on the right side of the line. The left side of the line was marginally better with Ramil and Newman. That said, Newman drew an unnecessary roughness penalty in the third or fourth quarter when the Spartans were trying to make one last push to stay in the game. Not that it really mattered, because I believe the 2 plays after that ended up being sacks. But defense, just the lack of defensive back depth and the lack of defensive line pressure sunk the Spartans, plus a couple linebackers making bad plays, bad reads, would put I believe one of the Illinois touchdown runs was freshman defensive back Jalen Thompson one-on-one versus the Illinois running back Josh McCray, who ended up with 3 touchdowns on the day. It was a lack of execution on all fronts. Special teams was not great either. Jonathan Kim missed an extra point, in addition to multiple punt returns going for 10, 15 yards, and making the Spartans, any good punt Eckley would have, if Eckley boots a 52-yard punt, and you only get, and they get a 15-yard return, Eckley's only booting the ball 37 yards, and that's not a winning success against any Big Ten team, let alone Illinois, which is marginal. I wouldn't say they're even in the top 3 for best teams Michigan State has played this year. That said, they are still, I believe, a top 20 defense statistically, or top 30-ish. So it was not a recipe for winning Michigan State football. In my opinion, this was one of the worst full game performances that I've seen from the Spartans this year. Against Ohio State, they at least were able to stay in it for the first half in terms of racking up yardage. Against Michigan, they were able to stay in it for basically the whole game. Iowa, obviously, we saw them dominate. this was right up there around Oregon and the last three quarters against Indiana, in my opinion, in terms of how the Spartans executed, which was not at all. What did you see, Chris?
Yeah, pretty much the same. Unfortunately, it was just one of those frustrating games. As the game went on, you just didn't feel like anything was really going our way, and not being able to establish the run was my biggest thing. Like Zach said, Aiden Childs was our leading rusher. Unfortunately, Nate or K'Ron Lynch Adams didn't really have any success on the ground. Not entirely their fault. Some of that was the lack of push from the line, but yeah, some things to correct. Obviously, I know it's getting late in the season, but that's where a lot of our issues lie on offense and defense is within the trenches. So hopefully, a game against a weaker Purdue maybe helps fix some of those, and we can get working on reestablishing some things, get some confidence built up. Because I mean, the goals of this team that we kind of set out, I don't think they're the internal goals, but the goal of making a bowl game is still on the table. You win against Purdue, which you're favored to, and then you get a game against Rutgers to be bowl eligible. So, still possible. So let's try to focus in and get everything corrected as much as we can, I guess. So, but yeah, that was my biggest thing. We all kind of hit on it. But did you guys have anything else you wanted to add before we got into Purdue?
Not really. The only injury front update we have, besides Brantley and Malik Spencer being out, Wayne Matthews was out of that game. Nothing has really come of his status or what the injury was in the first place. So he may be back this week. We don't really know. Additionally, the only Spartan to really go down mid-game would be Caleb Gash. He had to be helped off by trainers. I believe he walked under his own power to the tent. Gash is more of a contributor on special teams. So that's about all I saw from the injury front from when I was at the stadium.
All right, yeah, and hopefully they get healthy soon. That's been another bugaboo, and I hate to blame that on any of the players or anything because they're kind of playing a little shorthanded as well. So we've just had a lot of rough injuries, especially in the defensive side of the ball this year. So hopefully we can get maybe some help in the last couple of weeks, or if we do make a bowl game, get some reinforcements for that. But moving on to hopefully a little bit more of a cheerful subject. Purdue comes into town tomorrow, Spartan Stadium, 8:00 kick. Spartans, I believe, last I saw, 13.5-point favorites, and the game will be televised on Fox. This is the first time we've played Purdue since 2021, that fateful time when we went into West Lafayette and had our House of Horrors game against them back in our Peach Bowl season. So that'll be the first time we've met since then. MSU does lead this all-time series 36-29 with 3 ties. And MSU is 22-12 in East Lansing against Purdue. So, like we had just talked about, Purdue is 1-9 on the year. Their only win was coming against Indiana State. So not the best of years. There's some rumblings that their head coach, his employment status may hinge on this game or the next game. So be something to see, I guess, what happens over there. But yeah, this is a game the Spartans should probably win. Probably should win fairly easily. That being said, it hasn't seemed like anything easy has happened all year, so we'll see how that goes. But guys, what are we thinking about thoughts on Purdue?
Well, looking at this game, the two main players on the Purdue offense that the Spartans have to stop are running back Devin Mockabee, who is in my opinion, one of the more underrated backs in the entire Big Ten, mostly because he's on such a not great Purdue team. And then the other player to really stop is tight end Max Clare, who has 566 receiving yards and team-leading 3 receiving touchdowns this season. And unfortunately for the Spartans, linebacker coverage and stopping the run game is something that has been a little sketchy for the Spartans, with linebackers covering players. We saw what Colston Loveland did to the Spartans when they played Michigan. and the Spartan defense is coming off a game where Illinois running back Josh McCray had 3 touchdowns against them. So obviously, looking at this from an offensive standpoint for Purdue, they're not great on offense, but 2 of their key players are matchups that Purdue is going to look to exploit. That said, I do not believe this offensive line for Purdue is anywhere near what Illinois had, but it is still a concern. I feel good about it, but I would say this is one where the Spartans have to realize Purdue has a lot to play for. Trying to keep their coach if obviously the players would like to keep their coach. And their next game again, this is their most winnable FBS game all season, with what they have left as they get to face Indiana the week after. So you have to imagine these Purdue players will come in fired up and want to take it to the Spartans and get a win for respectability in Big Ten play.
No, I was just going to say, I think this is kind of a lose-lose situation for both teams. If Purdue loses, your head coach is probably gone, right? And this might be a little bit harsh, but if Michigan State loses, you already see fans starting to question Jonathan Smith and that hire. Imagine what it's going to look like if he loses to this Purdue team. Not saying it's right, not saying we should be there, but if you lose to a 1-9 Purdue team at home with a possibility of going to a bowl game, I'm not saying you let Jonathan Smith go. I think that is way far-fetched. I think anyone saying that is wrong. I think anyone kind of saying this was a bad hire right now is wrong. We just don't know where this coaching staff is right now. We don't know what this team is going to look like in a couple of years. I think you have to give them time. That's part of a rebuild is about. But this is a game that coaches are going to be really affected by the result of this game. And I think it's going to be kind of either one is going to get fired because of it or one's going to lose a lot of trust in the fan base. And I think if you're Jonathan Smith, you have to approach this game as a must-win, not only for a bowl, but you also have to approach it as a must-win to keep kind of the fan base around. Now, a win isn't necessarily going to bring the fan base back, but at least it's going to give you a possibility to go to a bowl game, which I think, again, we talked about most people wanted that at the beginning of the year. You still have to beat Rutgers at home, but we talked about how Rutgers earlier this year doesn't have a great quarterback. So I don't think you necessarily have to worry too much right there. But regarding this Purdue team, there's one thing that I want to see, and that is running the ball. And if you're going to run the ball against anyone in the FBS, especially in the Big Ten, it has to be against this Purdue team. They are one of the worst, if not the worst, run defenses in the Big Ten. So if you can't run the ball on this Purdue team, that is going to be a real concern. You're not going to be able to run against Rutgers if that's the case. Now, if they are able to run against Purdue, does that mean that they're going to be able to run against Rutgers? No. But, this is the team you have to be able to run the ball on. And I would really love to see a really good running attack from Michigan State for the first time since Iowa. And then the other thing that Purdue does a little bit different that we haven't really seen too much this year, they kind of do like a 2-quarterback system. It seems like Hudson Card is going to be their starter, but they've been playing Ryan Brown quite a bit, the freshman. He's a little bit more elusive than Hudson Card. He's not going to run at all. Brown will run, so kind of watch out for that, see what happens there. But this is just a game to me that I think whoever loses, they're either going to lose their job or they're going to lose trust in a lot of the fan base, which is why I think it's a kind of a lose-lose situation for both teams because someone's not coming out of that game happy.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I've been pretty vocal about the fan base here in East Lansing being a little too, I don't know, I want to word this, I guess, a little too quick to judge Coach Smith. And I understand the frustrations with where recruiting is and where they feel like the program is. But, again, we kind of talked about this last week, but if you would have said going into last year when Coach Smith was hired, if we looked at this point 1 year, because it's been about a year since he was hired. So if you were to look in time 1 year, what's your realistic outlook on the program? And to have a 4-6 record with 2 winnable games left to become bowl eligible, I think we all probably would have said that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I think it goes to without saying that Coach Smith really inherited kind of a mess of a program. I've used the term dumpster fire before, and that's no doubt or nothing against the players that stayed or anything like that. Just the program we had. I mean, you guys have all heard the numbers, the amount of transfers in and out. We've lost scholarship players. We've lost commits, and it was a lot to come in and settle. And the ones who stayed really had their work cut outs to get us to this point this year. So with that being said, I think the fan base is being a little overly critical of what Jonathan Smith has done. But if you go out and you lose the game to Purdue, it's going to be harder and harder for guys like me to say, okay, we're overreacting a little bit, because it's that type of game, I think. Should win. I'm not going to say we should win by 30 or, whatever. There's still a group of 5, Power 4 team, I guess you want to call it now. They're still a Big Ten team. They get decent athletes. I don't want to say I expect to blow anybody out, but win the game. Use it kind of like you would as a tune-up, like an FCS game, where you get some stuff right, you get some confidence rolling, and hopefully that carries into Rutgers, because we need some lifelines, I guess. And you see, especially when you have the programs around us doing really well on all fronts. You got Ohio State clicking on all cylinders. Penn State's looked as good as they've looked in years. Michigan, even though they're having a down season, the recruiting's on fire as we've been recording this. It was announced that they just flipped Bryce Underwood from LSU. So now you're going to have the number 1 recruit in the country next year in your going against you and at your rival. So I understand the frustration, and I think hopefully maybe we can start to quell some of that, get a couple wins, because winning does cure all of it. So hopefully this is the start of that.
Yeah, and like I was saying, I don't want to be too harsh on Jonathan Smith, because I think people that are there right now obviously are too harsh on it, and I disagree with it. But like you're saying, Chris, and like I was saying, if you lose this game, it's just hard to defend. And not saying it means it's a bad hire by any means, it just means that you're going to have to work really hard to gain this fan base's trust back, which might mean winning 7, 8, 9 games next year, which if you look at the schedule, that's where MSU should be next year.
Doable.
Definitely. Yeah, another thing to touch on, looking at this Purdue defense, they have only forced 5 takeaways all season, so Aiden Childs, I'm not saying that I'm expecting, a Jared Goff 18 for 18, 300 passing yard game from him. That said, I'm expecting a very clean game from Aiden Childs with this Purdue defense. They have gotten 18 sacks on the year, 2 players above 5 sacks. But they're right on the same tier as Michigan State. Michigan State has 15 sacks all season, all of them coming in the first 4 games, of course. But this should be a game where Aiden Childs should show that flash that he had as the number 1 quarterback in the transfer portal. He doesn't have the excuse of, they have, a Will Johnson. Obviously, he didn't play Johnson this year, but the point they don't have a Denzel Burke of Ohio State or someone. They've only gotten 4 interceptions, have only forced 2 fumbles, and only recovered 1. So this Purdue defense is, on paper, not that great. And the Spartans should be able to exploit that in both the run and the pass game.
Yeah, and I think those are exploitable weaknesses, I guess, for the lack of the words. I really think Aiden can, or I guess I should say Aiden's skill set can really benefit going against this defense. It kind of matches up well. I think he's going to be able to hit some options in the pass game, as well as maybe extend some plays with his legs and create some offense that way. Similar to kind of how he was manufacturing plays in the Boston College game. I'm hoping he's not running for his life as much as he was in the Boston College game, but I think he's going to have the ability to get out and kind of move, and hopefully, as long as he keeps making smart decisions, it should run smoothly. But it remains to be seen. Like we said, Purdue's got a lot to play for, and it's not going to be easy. So hopefully we can get on the positive side for change, because it's been a rough few weeks, I guess, for Michigan State football. But any last thoughts before we get into score predictions and that sort of thing from you guys?
Just hoping the team plays as good as their uniforms are going to look.
Yes, at least we're going to look good. So, all right, I'll start us then. Score prediction, I'm going to go with, let's see. I'm going to go with 34-13 MSU. First touchdown. I almost wanted to take Jack Belling, but I'll leave that for Zack, just so he can hit it one.
I was thinking the exact same, Chris. I was thinking that too.
We'll see how down bad we can get Zack. Give me let's see. Give me, I don't know. I'll take AZ Johnson, I guess.
I was thinking that too. Oh my gosh.
So I don't want to pick Nick Marsh every week. I think it's probably going to be either Aiden keeping it, but I want to go something different. So AZ Johnson.
I feel almost too confident about this game. So instead of being confident about a win on my drive up to MSU tomorrow, I'm sure I'll convince myself we're going to lose. That said, I'll put it on tape right now so that we can replay this if MSU loses. 42-14. Perfect. I feel like this team is going to come out for blood, take out some of that frustration. I do think the 14 on defense is a little bold. I wouldn't be surprised to see Purdue put up 21, 28 with the Spartans down their top 4 defensive backs. But this quarterback room does not scare me all that much for Purdue. If the Spartan defense can contain Devin Mockabee and the linebackers and safeties can converge on Claire, I feel really good about this game. For the first touchdown, I was considering going outside the box with AZ Johnson. I'll say give me Montori Foster with a touchdown catch.
I got pretty close score to what Chris had. I was going to go 30-17, Michigan State, and we're going to get a first score this year from Jack Belling for the first touchdown of the game. So I still can't believe he's not scored this year, and I really hope he does eventually score, because it would be cool to get to see him score. But he's going to score in a green and white uniform at some point. That's my prediction. It's either going to be this year or next year. So it's going to happen. Hopefully, it's this game.
Yep, absolutely. I think you might be right. I got a feeling it might happen tomorrow. So that'll be it for the football preview. Like I said, we are going to do a more in-depth basketball preview for Maui separately. We did have one good bit of basketball news break right before we started recording this. We're recording this Thursday night, and Tom Izzo had just confirmed Jace Richardson avoided major injury, and it sounds like he's cleared to travel to Maui. So hopefully that's a good sign that all things are going smoothly. He was kept out of practice today, but that was more precautionary. So once they land in Maui, hopefully we'll get some better updates. But it sounds like he might play. Emmett.
Just a quick update for Richardson. Richardson did practice and everything except the active drills today. He was seen riding a stationary bike during those active drills to keep warm. So he is doing basketball activities. That said, they don't want to risk him rolling his ankle, hurting the sprain any more than they have to before they really get on the ground in Hawaii. Just that quick update. Also, around the world in Spartan sports, also on Friday night, the Spartans will be traveling to Durham, North Carolina. The women's soccer Spartans will be traveling to Durham, North Carolina to play ranked Texas in the NCAA women's soccer tournament.
And
Yes.
speaking of basketball, can we never play Stanford again? Because I love buckyball, but like they didn't shoot well and they still shot 35%. And like I know the way that this basketball team has started basically every single game is they've been down big and then somehow fight their way back at halftime. We go on some crazy run. Like look at Bowling Green. We went on a 12-0 run to end the half, then 18-0 run to end that game, and then look at the run Michigan State went on to end the game against yeah. Like
Yeah.
it's just crazy. We just go on runs, and that's the reason why we win games. And if we could stop keeping these games so close, that would be fun, honestly. Because well, that is Michigan State basketball. It seems like recently. Can we just blow out one of these teams for once, please? Like, is that too much to ask? Like, we almost shot 30% from three. Jaden Akins was absolutely spectacular in this game. Love seeing him shoot the ball a little bit better. Shimon Zapawa. I always thought it was Zapawa, but it's Zapawa, which I think makes his last name even cooler. But he had a really good game. We've gotten good performances recently, and I'm glad we won this game against Stanford. And Maui's going to be really interesting because we're going to need Jace Richardson, and it sounds like he's going to be all right. I think a lot of people were really worried about that injury at first. Didn't necessarily look good. Don't know what this Michigan State team looks like without Jace Richardson, which is a little nerve-wracking. But I do think that Trey Hallman's going to continue to play well. That hopefully Jaden Akins continues to play well. Hopefully he continues to make shots. And then we just need a little bit more from some of these sophomores. Give me more Xavier Booker. I think this was one of his better games against Stanford. And then, of course, I felt bad, but Jeremy Fears wasn't good in this game and got benched. But I think he'll be better going forward.
Yeah.
It was a learning experience for him. First real time going up against a heavy press because he didn't get any big. Remember, he did not get much Big Ten press play because he didn't see Rutgers or Iowa due to his injury last season.
Yep.
So he first time against a collegiate press. And that said, Samford confirmed that they had ran different presses than they had been doing all season, specifically designed to try to trap the Michigan State guards. And with 4 early turnovers, it obviously worked pretty well, I would say.
Absolutely. And one thing I wanted to mention before we got going for the episode, I wrote an article yesterday for Shadows about the MSU hockey team and their exhibition tonight, which is currently going on in Plymouth, or actually about to puck drop in Plymouth. There was a story that had kind of came out. One of the Michigan hockey assistant coaches' wife, unfortunately, is fighting a pretty tough battle with a rare type of breast cancer. And this coach for Michigan, Matt Deschamps, him and Adam Nightingale are really close friends. They played together back in the East Coast League and coached, and their families are really close. Kids are friends, wives are friends. So Adam Nightingale and the USNTDP worked out a deal for tonight's exhibition that $5 from every ticket sold was going to go directly to help Matt and his wife kind of get some care that she needs. And so that kind of got blasted out on social media yesterday, and the message got kind of spread around so we could try to get as many Spartans down to Plymouth as we could tonight. And that seemed to work because, as I heard at about 5 o'clock this afternoon, it was standing room only left at CompuWare, or old CompuWare, whatever it's called nowadays. So good to see that. Good to see the Spartan hockey program stepping up. All rivalry nonsense aside, I think that's a pretty good cause to really go after. So I'm glad that worked out, and hopefully that helps out, and hopefully we get some good news on Kelly Deschamps. I always mispronounce their name, but hopefully good vibes come through that. And then also MSU football. I know we briefly mentioned the fan base being kind of down, I guess, on recruiting and the overall state of the program. I do want to say this is a really big weekend for recruiting. Jonathan Smith has a lot of potential recruits, big-time recruits, coming on campus for the Purdue game tomorrow. There's a couple of flip candidates, Terrence Edwards being one. There's a couple other ones that are visiting for official visits. Jace Clarizo is giving us a weekend-long visit. He's currently committed to MSU, but Alabama's been really going hard after him, and he wants to, make sure we're getting a fair shake still. So, and then, of course, next year, 4-star offensive lineman Gregory Patrick from Portage High School has been a big target from MSU ever since Coach Smith stepped on campus. He's coming for an official visit. A lot more, too. I think we've got maybe 10, I can't remember the list. The last I looked at it was 10 or more visitors coming. So cross your fingers for good recruiting momentum. Maybe we can get some more commits before signing day next month. So that's all I had. Anything else before we wrap it up, guys? All right. Well, I think that'll call it for the episode. We appreciate everybody tuning in and supporting us like always. Give us a follow on social medias. All of them will be posted in the links below like always. And then, of course, if you have any questions or suggestions, shoot us an email and we'll get to them as soon as we can. Emmett will be at the game, like we said, tomorrow. So if you want any real-time updates, follow him on Twitter for his press tweeting. I don't know how he gets off so many tweets a minute, but he's an expert at it. So, yep. So we appreciate everybody like always, and we'll be back after tomorrow to wrap up football and then preview Maui next week. So we appreciate everybody. Have a good night. Go Green.
Go White.
Go White.